You want to be making moves on the street, have no attachments, allow nothing to be in your life that you cannot walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you spot the heat around the corner.
He's here. I can feel it.
A driven detective.
You search for the scent of your prey, and then you hunt them down. That's the only thing you're committed to.
It keeps me sharp, on the edge, where I gotta be.
A professional thief.
The bank is worth the risk.
What's the estimate? 12.2 million. You're on.
On the streets of Los Angeles.
I want full surveillance. Round the clock, we never close, open 7 days a week.
You're fugitive number one with a bullet. It's double the risk here.
You're wrong. It's 4 times the risk, and I'm double the worst trouble you ever had.
You recognize the MO? MO is that they're good. If you think these guys are scoring once and passing through, I doubt it.
Assume they got our phones, assume they got our houses, assume they got us.
If I'm there and I gotta put you away, I won't like it, but I'll tell you, you are going down.
What if you do got me boxed in, and I gotta put you down? Because no matter what, you will not get in my way. I will not hesitate for a second.
Al Pacino. Robert De Niro. Val Kilmer. In a Michael Mann film.
Whatever score they're gonna take next, they're gonna have the surprise of a lifetime.
Well, guys, it's been a minute since we've been together. I'm so excited to be back with you. Welcome to a brand new episode of ReconCinemation. I'm your host, John Diner.
I'm David Munchak.
I'm Brent Hutchins.
And this is the podcast that takes a look back at some of our favorite films from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And yes, it's a huge episode. We are looking at Michael Mann's Heat.
Yeah.
Heat.
Cue the heat is on. Wait, no, sorry, that's the wrong.
That's actually what we're talking about, just the song. Yeah. And but this is like at least in our lifetime, this is generally considered an all-time great. I have seen people's opinions kind of vary as time has gone on as well.
Really?
That some people who loved it just kind of don't love it anymore, and we'll talk about where each of us stand on it, but
certainly.
So why did we end up choosing this film now? How did we get here? Originally we had Manhunter slotted in here.
Oh,
yes, we did.
Which
that's true.
Which is, yes, another Michael Mann film, one of his best, and one I've been wanting to cover for a long time. But
is it your favorite? Sorry, I'm going to derail for a second. Is it your favorite?
That's a question. That's a legit question, because my favorite tends to vary depending on which one I've seen most recently between Thief, Manhunter, and Heat. So and Heat I've been actually up and down on as far as it being my favorite. But
it's like the Ghoulies franchise. The one you said the latest. Yeah, is your favorite.
Exactly. Right now it's 3.
But there's not a bad one in the bunch.
Exactly. But
although I do like the toilet scene in part 2, that's probably my favorite.
It's kind of the best. Our good
is
friend.
Part 2?
I think that's 2. Isn't 3 where they go to college?
I
think it is.
What are the Ghoulies getting up to in part 3?
Yeah.
It might be.
Unfortunately, I didn't research that this week.
Ghoulies go to college is part 3. Yeah.
It might be time for Ghoulies 4. Post grads.
That's right. The reunion.
But we were going to be talking about Manhunter this week, but sadly, a few weeks ago, we lost the great Tom Sizemore, and that triggered some conversation, and we opted to switch over to Heat. So staying in the Michael Mann world, but looking at one of Tom Sizemore's greatest performances and one of his biggest, probably one of the top 2 biggest films that he's done.
Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
But let's take a minute here in the beginning. Let's talk about Tom Sizemore. Personally, obviously, he's had a lot of issues, a lot of problems along the way. So I'm not really going to concentrate on Tom as a human because there were clearly a lot of issues. He had a lot of personal problems and, negative things kind of all over the place, especially since 2003, maybe 2002. Not a lot of good things there. I think he was trying to pull the nose up at the end, but I want to talk about him as a performer, and I think all of us really, really, really loved a lot of his performances in the earlier part of his career. What do you guys think? Where are you on Tom Sizemore as an actor?
I've probably seen the fewest of his roles if I'm a betting man compared to Brent. But I've always enjoyed everything. He stands out for me from Saving Private Ryan. That was sort of like probably where I'm like, oh, that guy's great. I know that guy. But I wasn't even sure where, if I was just knowing him or just knowing he was around, but not knowing where from. So, well, I remember from Passenger 57. He was
there. You go, good one, David.
Snipes. So yeah, actually, I knew that's probably where I knew him from. He was popping up because I never finished Natural Born Killers. Never got to the end of that movie. Couldn't quite stomach the rest of that movie.
I'm not surprised to hear that. That is, I can't really watch. I've watched it, 3 or 4 times over my life, and I think I maxed out on it.
Yeah. I guess he's always been this guy that's been around, and in like really key parts in lots of different films.
Yeah, he was a big part of the really like the mid to late 90s and going into the early 2000s before his career kind of I think his personal life and his career really kind of derailed, but a lot of good movies and some great ones too. And I think his career was really on its way up still when it sidetracked. But had he stayed on the right path, I think like he really, to me, he had like a Steve McQueen level of like cool. Like he had a real persona, and he was a good actor. He could play, a whole wide variety of roles. He could play the crazy bad guy, but he could also play like the lovable kind of, right-hand man, whether it's to Robert De Niro in Heat or to Tom Hanks in Private Ryan, but a lot of great roles along the way. Brent, where do you stand on Tom?
It's interesting researching for the podcast. He's been in a bunch of things, the majority of which I have not ever seen or even really heard of, but he has been in a handful of movies that came out, while I was in high school and were very instrumental in part of my love of film and things like that. So he stands out as like this huge kind of figure in like kind of my movie history. So I appreciate those movies that he's been. I mean, I know you guys were joking about Natural Born Killers, and yes, I think on a rewatch nowadays that would be a tough one to really kind of grind through, but man, I saw that movie a bunch when I was younger. I liked it a lot just because it was so gratuitous and out there, and it had Oliver Stone attached, it had Quentin Tarantino attached as a writer, and it was right when Tarantino was like, if you were into film, it wasn't really before Tarantino fully exploded, but if you were into film and had been influenced by Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, like you were aware that Tarantino was partly doing the writing on this, and for that fact alone, at that specific time in my life, I was like, yeah, I'm about this because it's gonna be pushing the limits. But on top of that, I mean, Saving Private Ryan's one of my favorite movies. Heat, I think is arguably one of the best like heist movies that there is, and there's a lot of great ones, and it would be easy to argue any one of those, but this one I think is like really, really significant, and then there's a lot of movies that he did that he was like tiny roles, didn't even have credits in, but I still loved, like Point Break, things
Blue
like
Steel.
that. Blue Steel. Yeah. Blue Steel's on my list. But like True Romance, is another one that we've talked about that's kind of with that, in that same vein of that Tarantino inspired, kind of the Tarantino inspired films that he was kind of a part of in the 90s that, were super influential with me wanting to be a filmmaker and really like taking the next step to go to film school and things like that. And so in that regard, like, I mean, he's larger than life, right? Like, I mean, he is like one of the like recognizable figures from my childhood as far as like movies that influenced me at that time period. So I appreciate him for that. Obviously, yeah, like you were saying, he had a lot of personal issues and a lot of things going on that were, terrible, and in no way can you support or get behind. And I'm glad you say at the end he was trying to kind of get his life straight, and it's too bad that he passed away before he could really do that. But I mean, at the time in the 90s, for sure, like this guy was a big deal for me.
Yeah, he was for me in the probably 96, 97 zone. He was in my four horsemen of actors, which comprised of Mr. Sizemore, Mr. Michael Madsen, Chris Penn, and Michael Biehn. If I could have
three of those guys are all the same guy. Like three of them are all the same guy.
And if I could have had a movie like
exactly
my post Tarantino, like dream movie was like the four of those guys were like an elite squad of like the top
Magnificent
cops.
Seven with them. Like that's
yeah. That would have been my dream movie with Michael Biehn as the leader. But
of course,
yeah, Sizemore was like he was in my top four. I loved the guy for so long, and whether it was, I think the first time I saw him, like you said, David, Passenger 57 was where he jumped out. He's like Wesley Snipes' like cop friend who's like on the ground talking to him. I think I haven't seen the movie since '94, maybe. But
he's like Bruce Willis's Al.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, True Romance, Natural Born Killers, and so he's in both, like you said, Brent, both Tarantino kind of related movies, but not.
Yeah.
And they're in the Tarantino cinematic universe.
Right, exactly. They're not exactly Tarantino, but they're influenced.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
And they're characters like that exist in that world. But I think he's the only person who's in both of them. And Heat was it, like I thought he was the coolest guy in Heat. Like he's just that shot, that's a famous shot now where they're in the diner and he just leaned, like there's a guy observing what they're doing and he just leans over and gives him that stare. Like, yeah, it's such a great look. And
you don't want to look over here.
Yeah. And we'll talk about Tom in Heat, but The Relic, I mean, that was his leading, his shot at a leading role. And it's not the greatest movie, but, he's good in it. And I think, following that up with Private Ryan, and he's working with Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, and he's hitting such a high level at the same time that as his career is going up, he's having, the drugs are starting to take over and be more and more of a problem, to the point that Robert De Niro and Steven Spielberg personally showed up at his door and took him to rehab for, I think, the first time. And wow. De Niro later took him again towards the end of his life, took him personally a second, or I don't know what time that was. But yeah. So, he had a lot of powerful friends that were really trying to help him. And it's really unfortunate. But I remember a show, Robbery Homicide Division, which was briefly on the air. It was a CBS show, but it was also a Michael Mann produced show. And he was the star. And it was like, it felt like it could be the 2000s LA version of Miami Vice. And sure. I think between, Mann, the way Mann wanted to do the show and Tom's problems at the time, it was not going to work out. And, and then he spent the second half of his career really just doing a lot of B and C and D level movies that, I don't think too many people saw, straight to video kind of stuff. But we did see him return in the third season of Twin Peaks, which was very cool to see him pop up there. Didn't love that season, but again, good to see him there.
He's apparently in the next season of Cobra Kai. He's in an episode of Cobra Kai.
I did hear that. I don't know if those were actually filmed or not. I think he was. I've heard two stories. One that he was cast, but wasn't filmed, hadn't been filmed yet. So
got it.
We'll see if that actually. We'll see when it comes out. But the other movie I want to throw out there is Wyatt Earp, which we covered here.
Yeah,
you can check it out, the archives, ReconCinemation.com. Where you can find both True Romance and Wyatt Earp. But
Wyatt Earp's on my list, but I'm more a Tombstone guy. But,
it's one or the other, yeah. But but he plays Bat Masterson, and it's a smaller part in that film, but there he is right on screen with Michael Madsen. So my dream was partially coming true there.
It's true.
Wow,
So he worked with Madsen and Penn, but I don't think we saw Michael Biehn Sizemore team up.
Bean was in Tombstone. That's the.
I know
he was in the other one.
Yeah, they all got divided on that.
You needed the mashup.
But so rest in peace, Tom Sizemore. I hope I hope he is able to find the peace that he did not have in life. But so we're gonna look at Heat in sort of an homage to him, but also one of our next Michael Mann films and one of the biggest movies of our 90s. So,
well, I am over fucking well. What do you want for that? A junior G-Man badge?
Have we done Michael Mann films on
prior to Brent's arrival on the show? David and I looked back at Thief, which you can find in the archives as well. So, we talked about the kind of early side of Michael Mann's career and his rise through TV writing and how he came to that film. And we'll talk kind of that journey from Thief to Heat here. So, but Brent, where are we? We're December 1995. What's the state of the world, the cinematic world at that point?
The cinematic world or the world in general?
In general, that's fine.
The world in general. There's a couple things that went on in 95 that were kind of big news. O.J. Simpson trial. He was that came to its finality in October of 95 with his not guilty verdict. And then I think cinematically, the biggest one that I take away from, because it's affected my life 100%, is in November of 95 in New York City was the premiere of the first fully CG animated film. Anybody want to take any guesses? Not Shark Tale, but I know that's a fave. That's right, Toy Story. So Toy Story premiered in New York in November of 95, and then basically opened the door for CG animated movies forever. So
and Pixar splashed onto the world.
Onto the scene. That's right. So that's pretty cool. Go ahead.
Also 1995, this person with a lot of friends starred in a movie with a chimpanzee. Any guesses?
Are you talking about, is it Ed?
I think
is that the name of the movie?
I think it's Ed.
Matt LeBlanc?
Matt LeBlanc?
That's awesome.
I'm not sure if that's true, but
how could one forget?
Did anybody see it? I didn't see it.
There were 3 people that saw it. Can you name all 3?
I don't think any of them are here.
That's true.
Let's see what else. Oh, the last original comic strip published by Bill Watterson, his last strip of Calvin and Hobbes, came out in December of 95 as well. So yeah. And there's a ton of other things that happened in 95 that were big deals, but I'm just kind of focusing on things that happened towards the tail end of that.
Get us there. Was that the Houston Rockets? Were they still winning NBA championships?
Championship years for the Rockets and all sorts of stuff. So
that was during the Michael Jordan break. And
We don't need to talk about that. It was during the Hakeem Olajuwon takeover. That's what we should
that was a team. Robert Ory, right?
Yeah, Ori was on there.
Yeah.
Clyde Drexler.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Going right back to 95. David, why don't you run it down? What is happening in the Michael Mann film Heat?
Oh, well, Robert De Niro plays Neil McCulley, who is a career criminal who is put on the radar of Detective Vincent Hanna, played by Al Pacino. After a high-profile bank robbery ends with the death of a few security guards, and Pacino and De Niro's characters explore their identities, as either the cop or the robber, and the exploration of the sacrifice of not having a quote-unquote normal life. And we follow their cat and mouse game in the streets of Los Angeles. So can Pacino catch De Niro and his gang of robbers before they make one big score and slip away for good? Is that
question?
That's the question.
Can they?
That's the big question. We don't know. You got to watch to find out.
It's worth the watch.
This is one of the biggest movies of our. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but
Jesus
I feel
Christ,
like
really?
this is one of the biggest movies of our upbringing. I mean, at the time.
I don't disagree with that, and I think I know we're going to talk more about this. It's in the notes, but it's the coming together of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro that made this thing bigger than anything at the time, because they're huge actors.
They were the
90s.
two. I mean, at the time, they were considered the two greatest living actors.
Right, and they had never been on camera together. They've been in movies. They've been in movies together, but not together.
One movie.
Yeah,
they were in the same movie, but not on screen together.
Yeah, never acting against each other. And this was two powerhouses. This was freaking Ali and whoever, George Foreman. This was of the acting world. These two dudes coming together for this movie. It was a very big deal.
Yeah, and in a movie that had such a great supporting cast, which we'll talk about, but it was they're the top, but there's so many other good people right behind them.
Oh, 100%.
And with one of the greatest directors of our lifetime, really. But David, when was the first time? What's the first time you saw Heat? Do you see it in the theater, or do you see it later on?
I saw it much later on. I remember it being advertised, and I do remember seeing I don't know. Yeah. If I saw the trailer before a movie, I'm sure maybe I did, but I remember the ads on TV, and Val Kilmer looked super cool. And Val Kilmer is of course in the movie. And I was and they talked about De Niro and Pacino together and all that stuff. And I was like, ooh, that looks like a big deal. But I didn't see the movie until about 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah. All right.
Yes. So it wasn't, I had an awareness of Heat, and people talked about Heat a lot, but no, I never saw it until recently. To complete sort of my Michael Mann, I had to watch more. I felt like I needed to be watching more Michael Mann movies. So
I do for you, you don't do for me. Is that it?
This
Heat
is true.
up there. Yeah.
Well, it's cool. So you're going to have the more recent perspective on it, and see how 90s is this movie. But we'll come back to that.
I'm gonna go woke on it.
All right, do it.
Just kidding.
Don't let it sunset. Don't let it sunset.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, Brent, what about you? When was the first? Did you see Heat in the theater? You had to have.
It feels very much like it's one that I would, but I honestly, I cannot tell you whether or not I saw it in the theater. I saw it a bunch. I remember I've talked to you guys, I think, before about my buddy Chris Dixon, who's the close friend of mine from high school. I'd go over to his house every day, freshman year, junior year.
What up, dude?
Freshman through junior year, we would just hang out every day after school. And there were a handful of movies that he would watch on repeat. Point Break was one of them for sure. But this was another one, man. This was one of his favorite movies for a time, and we would watch it a lot. and like especially we'd focus on like the bank scene and things like that. But I remember seeing it a ton over there, and then I just always remember it kind of existing from that point forward. But I don't remember if I saw it in the theater or not. I feel like I didn't, but I just can't understand.
You would have remembered seeing it in the theater.
I need to reach out to some other old friends and see if we saw it together. I don't know. My memory comes and goes pretty significantly sometimes. But for some reason, I can't recall the first time I saw this.
Yeah. Well, I remember in '95, around my birthday, Casino had just come out. Casino and Heat had come out within a few weeks of each other. They were both in the theater when I was, when I was wanting to. My birthday party was like, get all my friends together and we're going to see a movie, and I had the choice of Casino or Heat, and I was like, well, definitely Casino, because I had been on at that point I had just kind of discovered Goodfellas and was really in love with that and with De Niro and I had
Scorsese flick.
I was like, oh, I'm 100% in for Casino, and I didn't see Heat till somewhere in '96 whenever it came out on home video, and I rented it pretty quickly and was like, what was I thinking? Like, how did I skip this movie for Casino? No, I do love Casino, but my obsession with Heat really kicked in, and I was the same way. I watched it over and over and over. I thought it was the coolest movie with the greatest cast, and it was probably maybe my favorite movie. Like that and Pulp Fiction were like my favorite movies at that time. But yeah, and then I loved it all through college. Like Brent, back at the College of Santa Fe, we were gonna make Heat 2, Cold as Ice. That was definitely in the cards. And I think you, in my casting, you were going to be playing the Tom Sizemore somehow coming back to life. I don't know. It wasn't about zombies, but
could have been.
Yeah. But loved it. And then, like I say a lot here with some of these movies that we look back at, I kind of fell out of love with it. Like at a certain point, it started to feel very 90s to me, very like on the nose and a little too much. And then watching it this time, man, I fell right back in love with it again. Like,
what about it? Other than there not being any cell phones, like what about it makes it feel 90s to you?
I think, for a while I got overwhelmed with the Pacino-ness of it. Was just, his, which we'll talk about.
She got a great ass, and you got your head all the way up it.
How big he is in this movie, it's legendary. It's almost as much as Scarface, but yeah, I think that at a point I was like, God, this is like, it's not even acting, like it's just over the topness, which is not how I feel now, but I went through a phase where I was down on it.
We'd like to submit the goatees of Dennis Haysbert and Robert De Niro as super 90s
as evidence. Okay, as fair evidence.
Enough. Wait, what are you trying to say, Dave?
Yeah. They look like little baby, like, oh wait, you know what? It's pretty, we need, like, they got to look a little more cool, like what's really trendy.
Let's give him some face. Let's give him a goatee.
And like it just does not work.
That's so funny. I didn't even register to me when I was watching it, but you're absolutely right. Those goatees are pretty spot on 90s.
Like I will say I liked this movie more when it was remade as Ambulance.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
No, I kid, but Ambulance very much influenced. It's a Michael Bay version of Heat, kind of. So
yeah.
Yeah, but again, watching it now, like I loved it all over again. Like I don't know. I haven't seen it in so long, and it was there was so much to love here, and seeing again this cast is incredible and so deep. I would say at the moment this feels like my number 2 Michael Mann. For me right now it feels like Thief, Heat, Manhunter, but all very, very close together. And again, it's something that can, if I watch Manhunter tomorrow, very well, that could be number 1 or 2. So really love all 3 of those. Let's talk about Michael Mann. So Michael Mann, we talked about his background on our Thief episode. Huge fans here. He's changed over the years, like most directors who have like a 40-year career will. I do feel like at times in some of his recent films, he'll sort of harken back in certain moments and certain shots, like right back to this style and Thief. But he was writing, I think he was directing on Police Story, which was a top show of the 70s, where he met Chuck Adamson, who was a technical advisor. Chuck Adamson was a cop who told, former cop who had told Michael Mann about his real life pursuit of Neil McCauley, who was a criminal, on this relationship that they had in the early 60s. And, it was a smaller version of what we see in the film, but it was very much the same kind of dynamic, that it was sort of a cat and mouse between these two in the Chicago area. And, Adamson pulled McCauley over and they went and had coffee, and the diner scene between De Niro and Pacino was almost the exact conversation that they had in real life. So, and they had that respect for each other, of two of the best at their jobs. One was a police officer, one was a thief, and a high level thief, and all of that got mirrored here. In reality, the next time they met after the diner meeting was when McCauley was trying to rob, I believe, a grocery store for about $13,000, and which was a lot of money in the early 60s, but was confronted by Adamson and his squad, and it ended up with McCauley being shot and killed in somebody's front yard a few blocks away. So a lot of this movie is very closely based on that relationship and some of the key moments that happened. So Mann kind of fell in love with this story and wrote the original script way back in 1979 when they were working together. And Adamson stayed close with Mann, and he worked with him as an advisor on Thief. He worked as an advisor on Miami Vice. I think he was the co-creator or one of the writers on Police Story. All of those are Michael Mann's shows. So they kind of worked
Police
together.
Story or Crime Story?
Crime Story. Which Dennis Farina was the lead in. And I just watched some of it recently, and it's very dated, but kind of, if you like Michael Mann, you should definitely check that out. So they worked together for like a decade straight almost. And this, story and this script was kind of simmering there. And I think when the time was right, Michael Mann was going to make the film. Finally, we get to Miami Vice winds down, Crime Story winds down. It's 1989, and Mann turns this into a 2-hour television movie that was going to be a pilot for a series called LA Takedown. Almost the same thing, the way he did Miami Vice. That started as a 2-hour movie that formed as the pilot for the series. So LA Takedown. You can catch this on YouTube, the whole TV movie. Did you guys get a chance to see it at all?
I didn't.
I did. I watched the whole thing. It was like watching Heat all over again, except dated in the 80s.
It's like Heat Junior. It's
kind of crazy actually to think about. I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but so Heat is like a masterclass, right? But also now I didn't even know LA Takedown existed until you sent us the link. And I was like, wait, what is this now? And I watched it, and Heat is this incredibly done movie with these insanely powerful performances. But it's like, Mann got a tech rehearsal for the whole movie by doing it in 89 with LA Takedown. So honestly, when they came back to do Heat, They got some extra money, they got some extra clout, but it was really just a perfect like kind of instance for them to not worry about actually making the movie because they already did it. They knew how to do it. They were just redoing it. Drop in these phenomenal actors and just let them shine in this like well-polished, well-oiled filmmaking scenario. Like it's kind of like I have to believe that by doing LA Takedown, it made Heat that much better, right? Like just
Absolutely.
filmmaking experience.
Who gets a practice run at
It's
making their
crazy.
movie like fully made, fully funded, shot, made, aired? You know, it's like,
and it is
how many people
honestly
have that?
Yeah, it's honestly almost shot for shot.
Yeah,
and it's still good. It's good.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Heat and you're a fan of Michael Mann, just check out LA Takedown just for interest only. It's, you know, again, it's a television version, so the budget's not as big. Obviously, the casting is not as, you know, as large as it is in the film. And there's a lot of characters that were flushed out and expanded on for the film, because this is an hour, a 90-minute movie versus a 2.5 hour movie. But there are definitely shots that you can tell like this is exactly what Mann envisioned, because it's the same in Heat,
right?
Like some of the same dialogue, the same shot angles, but it is the lesser version, honestly.
Yeah.
The diner scene, having the two lead actors who are nowhere near the level of Robert De Niro and Al Pacino at the time, play that against De Niro and Pacino's version, and it's like, whoa. Like,
yeah, that cat and mouse is a lot weaker.
Yeah.
In LA Takedown for sure.
But the whole robbery scene is very, very close to how it is in the movie. And
dude, like all my favorite scenes from Heat are in this. It's crazy. Like the opening heist scene, almost identical. The shipyard scene in Heat is different, but the scene is there in LA Takedown. But it's not in a shipyard. It's not as cinematic,
right?
Just in general, it's like in a alleyway somewhere, basically on the back side of a building. But then the bank heist is there, and then the diner scene, man. Like they're all It's like
the end plays out a little differently.
It does a little,
but it's like Heat on a budget.
Yeah.
But and what's the one connecting factor? Does anybody know?
Michael Mann.
Well, besides Michael Mann, you're right, David.
It's Ted Levine.
No, it's Xander Berkeley.
Xander Berkeley. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, who plays Vincent Hanna's wife's the person Vincent Hanna's wife's having an affair with. He's in one scene in Heat, but he plays Wayne Grow in LA Takedown.
That's who I meant. I get those two dudes confused.
Very
honestly.
close.
Like,
yeah,
they look very similar to me. Go back, David. Take a look at it. Like even when I was looking them up in the cast, I was like Wayne Grow. I was like, is that? Nope, that's the other guy.
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating. So if you're a fan and you haven't seen LA Takedown, head on over to YouTube. It's all there, the whole movie.
Yeah.
So check that out. But yeah, really interesting. So this comes out. It doesn't make it. Doesn't survive beyond the pilot episode. So it's essentially a movie of the week at this point. Mann goes on to make Last of the Mohicans, which was a huge, successful movie. I think that's another one. Someday we'll probably take a look at that. I think, that may not stand the test of time in a lot of ways, but that's a whole nother discussion. But very successful for Mann, and really takes him to the A-list. That, he spends the entirety of the 80s doing these, cops and thieves kind of, projects, and finally breaks out of that and shows, I can make like an Oscar level movie that's going to make money and be very successful. So what's the first project he does after that hit? Well, it's Heat. So comes right back to the thing that's been on his mind since 1979 at least. And he was in the middle of preparing a James Dean biopic, which could have been interesting, but he aborts that and shifts over to Heat.
He's not here, is he?
No, he gonna meet you tonight.
Tonight? What happened to right now?
I employed him because I knew you was coming this AM.
That's a bunch of bullshit.
No, I swear, he said no. Because he in Phoenix.
By the time I get to
man,
Phoenix,
I swear, man, tonight's the
you'll
best
be
I can do
rising.
for you.
So let's come back to the other huge elements here, Misters Pacino and De Niro. I mean,
those guys,
they were the top actors of our generation, really.
Yeah, I mean, especially at that time, for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
leading. I mean, you know, obviously they both came onto the scene, I think, in noticeable fashion, like in the 70s, and then built on that in the 80s. But like right here, 90s, mid 90s, like they are the top talent. You know.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, for 20 years, they're the top guys. You know, they both rose up, like you were saying, through the 70s and nominated for Best Actors, and from the Godfather films to Taxi Driver and The Deer Hunter and Scarface, and you know, both of them kind of paralleling each other as far as hits go. And then De Niro probably a little more consistently than Pacino through the 80s. You know, he's coming off right at this point A Bronx Tale and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Casino. So his relationship with Scorsese is still in, you know, really at its peak, you know, between Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino, one right after the other. Mm-hmm. Pacino, coming off Godfather 3 and Glengarry Glen Ross, and winning Best Actor for Scent of a Woman, which really marked kind of a comeback. He had kind of a lull in the early to mid 80s, but came back, I think, starting with, before that was Sea of Love and you know, going into The Godfather 3, and then Carlito's Way. So I think he had took a little bit of time off, and then Heat was sort of his comeback movie. So, you know, again, two top actors here. And I always thought that they had a rivalry, that they didn't get along. Apparently, I don't know where I got that from. I think that was maybe the rumor going around, but that was not true. Like they had been kind of casual friends just because they were in the same circle for so long.
That's just the hype machine trying to get you all ramped up for Heat.
Right. I remember hearing that like the diner scene there was a rumor that it wasn't actually, other than you know, I think you see a quick 2-shot of them, and that may not be totally correct, but there's like, you just see close-ups, and that's because they didn't shoot that scene, you know, at the same time, which is completely not true. Yeah. But we'll come back to that scene. But yeah, and but they were acquaintances more than friends. De Niro got the script first, and he's the one who showed it to Pacino and was like, "This would be kind of cool if this is you and me." And I think everyone embraced that idea wisely. So
yeah.
Remember Jimmy McElwain on the yard used to say, you want to be making moves on the street, have no attachments, allow nothing to be in your life that you cannot walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you spot the heat around the corner.
What do we think about De Niro as Neil McCauley? Who do you guys gravitate to when you watch this film? I mean, do you lean towards one or the other? Or is there somebody that you gravitate to more, or are you kind of even between the two?
I'm definitely more of the Neil McCauley, De Niro side of it.
Yeah. So you're rooting for McCauley to at least survive, if not get away with it.
Yeah, I am. And I don't know why exactly. I mean, he's the bad guy in theory, but he's not played like a bad guy. You know, like he's got integrity in what he does. He's got rules. He's got, you know, and he's got his code.
His code is everything to him. And these guys are flip sides of the same coin. Yeah. David, what about you? Did you lean one way or the other?
I think I wavered back and forth, but I don't know. I think ultimately I'm with Pacino on it. So, uh, I don't know. He like this examination of both of their lives, and it's like, boy, what are each of them doing? Like
Yeah.
that diner scene like illuminates like, boy, the choices these two guys have made I think it's a real fascinating thing. And yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately I'm just uh yeah, I guess I'm more of a Detective Hannah
Nice.
kind of guy. Yeah. I
I
wanted him to win.
I think I've always been on Macaulay's side. Like every time I watch him, like, oh, he's so close. Like really, like
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
not a bad guy. Yeah, he is, but
He is. I
yeah.
know.
I think it was a little more on Team De Niro than Pacino for most of my life. But yeah, now I'm kind of I don't know. I get both sides of it. They're just
Well, it's interesting to see the differences in their like personal lives too, right? Like
yeah,
because De Niro is kind of,
but
you know,
similarities too. Like there is so much. It's sort of mirror images of each other. But go ahead, Brent.
are they though? I mean, like in my head, the two kind of scenes that I think depict their home life best for me, or at least the ones that stick out, is you've got Pacino, who, at his house has his wife. They're obviously in love and have their thing. And there's like more going on. Like, it's like, it's like a family home. And even though like it's got its flaws, and obviously there's some issues with, the Natalie Portman character that they're trying to work through, like there's a lot of that just like life living happening there. Whereas like with De Niro's character, the scene that sticks out is him in his like empty like living room looking out over the water, like having a glass of something just like by himself quietly. And eventually he invites, he meets his love interest and whatnot, and like invites her in and stuff like
Edie,
that. But
yeah,
it like his big thing, and and he makes a point, I think he says it multiple times, is like, like never basically get attached to anything that you can't drop in an instant to get away from the heat, right? And so
right.
like it's very, I feel like it's not exactly a mirror. I feel like it's almost like the polar opposites, right? Like, yeah, they're similar but very different.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think at their core, maybe at their core, they're really similar characters.
Sure.
And in that line that that Vincent Hanna says, like, all I am is what I'm going after. That's really what they're all about. Like,
Yeah.
and it's whether it's Macaulay going after the score or Pacino or Hanna going after the criminal, that's what it's all about for them. And so in that sense, they're like the same. But yeah, and as well as like their personal lives are kind of either non-existent or a mess. They can't connect to someone else.
Yeah.
What we realize is like the only people they can connect with truly is each other, and which we see in the diner scene.
Yeah. I'm really starting to like my magnet analogy to that, because they're drawn to the things that are like they're attracted to, but at the same time, like at their core, they're attached, right? But they're on opposite sides of it.
Right.
So yeah,
you're a genius, basically. What you just proved.
I've been telling people that for years.
Well, Pacino's got a life that if you look at it a certain direction, you'd say like that's a pretty good home life, right? But it is a home life on the decline. It's not really working. It's not. It's a hard relationship. And then De Niro, yeah, he actually finds someone he connects with, and we get to see his like outside life kind of move up from the absolute nothingness. Like he can't get around to buying furniture to enjoy his beach house. Like,
yeah,
like that's what his. But it's like there's, he could have seen himself one last score moving and becoming a normal guy for the first time, even though but in the diner he's like, that's not for me.
Yeah.
So they both have a taste. They both give us examples of what their lives could be when you have nothing outside of your identity, or when you have this other thing that everyone says like that's the the American dream or whatever. and it's like it's not quite working for either of them. That really they only really belong in their first jobs, which is to be a cop and to be a criminal. Is maybe what's being said in this movie. I don't know.
I really like the production design of Macaulay's apartment or house that's overlooking the ocean. As a cleansing factor is a kind of something that repeats itself in Michael Mann's films. Like we see it in The Insider, where Al Pacino's character lives on the beach, and we see him quite often on the phone, feet in the water, right in the ocean, and we see that with Macaulay here. But his actual house is all glass or metal, cold, empty, really no real furniture other than a couch and a glass table. And that image, I think that image of him putting the gun down, I think is based on a painting that Michael Mann had seen. So, him sort of replicating that. But seeing there, and I love the way the film kind of goes back and forth, that bringing these characters together, and then when they split apart again, we parallel what's happening in each of their lives. And again, there's so many other cast involved. But this is and Pacino played Vincent Hanna. Again, watching it compared to LA Takedown, it's fascinating to see the different portrayals between the two actors. But Pacino's talked about that he played Hanna as a guy who, quote unquote, chips cocaine.
What do we got?
You understand what I'm saying? I get killed for telling you this shit.
Killed walking your doggy. She got a great ass. And you got your head all the way up it. When I think of asses, woman's ass, something comes out of me.
Which is one of my favorite phrases that I'm gonna take.
Yeah.
Chipping cocaine.
Yeah, I could believe that.
Yeah. I mean, with that, kind of playing in Pacino's mind, absolutely. You can totally see Hanna as somebody who's, a cokehead on the job.
Yeah, that sounds like a quote from a guy who may have done a movie all about cocaine.
He knew a little bit about it.
Where he did a lot of research.
May have sampled, who knows?
I would think that Al Pacino knows what cocaine is like.
I probably, if you came up through the 70s, I'm sure you know what.
I mean,
what cocaine was.
I have no judgment, but I'm pretty sure you would know what cocaine is like.
I mean,
right?
Yeah.
Dumb. I guess most people do. I don't know.
He played Scarface. It's
true.
He definitely researched. I'm not saying he did cocaine. I'm saying he researched that life.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think he knew a bit about the subject. Not to say that he used it himself, but as those kind of actors did, they studied and got in the zone. So
yeah, I'm actually gonna say it. I think he did cocaine, but it's okay. Everybody in the 80s, I think, did cocaine.
If you were alive in the 80s, you probably did it.
It was on these sets, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was at craft service. So.
Probably.
I feel like it was passed around in a big saddle, like a feeding bag.
Your sandwiches, your Gatorades, and Coke. Anybody?
And everyone's got that little piece of jewelry that's like a fingernail. And
growing up as a child in the 80s, your perception of cocaine in the 80s is that everybody had cocaine everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was just
in Hollywood.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So I've got a theory, and I brought this up on our Thief episode. I think I brought it up on our episode on The Driver and probably Reservoir Dogs, but it's or maybe not Reservoir Dogs, but I have a theory. It's the DTHCU. The DTHCU. It's the Drive, Thief, Heat cinematic universe. I think that there is a world. Now, it's not exactly true, but there is a world where you could argue that Ryan Gosling's character in Drive James Caan's character in Thief and Robert De Niro's character in Heat all could be the same person at different points in their lives. That there's a world that they are very similar characters who have very strict codes that they live by, and their whole life revolves around at different phases in their lives. It's not a real they're not really connected, but just there is a world where you could change things and make those characters the same guy. So I like to live in that world. So
I like it.
Yeah. I mean, you throw the Driver in there too. You know, Drive and the Driver are very, very similar movies and characters. So
yeah.
I would need. I haven't seen Thief in quite a while, and
you should change that because that's what I call a mistake.
Fair enough. Noted. I'll make sure to fix that.
That's a grave error.
If you haven't seen Thief within 3 months at any moment, then you're living a mistake.
Not living your best life.
You're failing. You're failing life, bro.
Yeah, you're letting yourself down. You didn't even know it.
Yeah, I do need to check that out again, apparently very soon. Drive. It's great. I could get behind it.
Yeah, I mean, just keep it in mind next time you watch those movies. It you know, I don't know if it 100% holds up. It's just a thought, though.
I mean, I think the Thief to Heat connection is easy to kind of buy into and sell. It's the connection of Drive. I'll have to analyze this.
Like a younger version of, you know, those characters. So
I mean, I don't see Robert De Niro in a cool sateen jacket with a tiger on the back, or scorpion or whatever.
In his youth, though, in Neil McCauley's youth, maybe.
But maybe, yeah.
The other, you know, we mentioned it, but I want to get back to it. There's this cast in this movie. I mean, it could take 20 minutes to just read who's in this, but all of them are amazing, and they're great in this movie. You know, not just, you know, in general actors, but their performances in this film. You know, on the Neil McCauley side, you've got Tom Sizemore, as we mentioned, in one of his greatest roles, Val Kilmer, Danny Trejo, Dennis Haysbert, John Voight, who this was a kind of a comeback movie for, right? Like he's another actor huge in the 70s, kind of falls off the radar in the 80s. And I want to say like this, you know, of course, followed by Anaconda almost immediately, brought him right back.
Had to be Anaconda.
But he does do this Mission Impossible and Anaconda, which was a big release, not a great film, all back to back. So kind of putting him back in the spotlight. But
yeah, I'd say this and combined with Mission Impossible. I feel like Mission Impossible is the one where I remember them talking about John Voight really like coming back.
People that was the highest profile thing. People really love that.
But this as a performance, I'm going to argue about Mission Impossible because I wholeheartedly disagree with the creative direction of Mission Impossible 1.
That's fair. That's fine. And I think you've got a good argument there. We're just merely talking about the public consumption of the movie and how it was like a very big deal when that movie came out.
Oh, it was huge. I mean, at some point we're going to cover the summer of 96, even though we've covered some of those movies specifically. We're going to talk about the whole summer at some point down the road. But but performance wise, you know, Heat is really, I think, one of John Voight's greatest performances. I mean, he's sort of Macaulay's, you know, he's the guy running things behind Macaulay. Like he's the doer. He's the one who sets everything up. He sets up the scores. He's the one kind of securing the getaway plan, like securing, you know, some of the funds. And he's kind of the brains making things happen. And somebody that Macaulay can really trust, which is, I think, something very rare for Macaulay to be able to do. Right. But, you know, and he's only in a handful of scenes, but they're usually quiet, just the two of them talking and plotting.
Was he also kind of like a father figure?
It seems like it.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it. But Yeah, just a really good performance here, and he's based on based on Eddie Bunker, who you'd probably know more from Reservoir Dogs as Mr. Blue, and he's one of the police captains in Tango and Cash.
Oh, right.
So Eddie Bunker was a real life thief who, ended up getting into the movie business and, connected with Tarantino and was a technical advisor on a lot of films, this being one of them. So there's actually a photo, I'll probably post it online, of Robert De Niro's crew, all those actors like with Eddie Bunker and, like kind of hanging out and probably working together. But, and I think they made Voight really look like Eddie Bunker at the time. So that was
Nice.
another cool little nod. Yeah, and just so though you've got an Amy Brenneman and Ashley Judd and then on the Al Pacino side, you've got all the police, the actors in his police squad, Ted Levine, who you mentioned, and Michael T. Williamson, who is another Michael Mann guy who shows up in a lot of Michael Mann stuff. Wes Studi.
Yeah, shout out to Wes Studi for sure.
Wes Studi, New Mexico.
Yep, all day long. Last of the Mohicans. I know we don't think that one holds up, but
but I mean that's got to be one of his greatest roles as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It just goes on and on and on, and just
don't forget your boy Tom Noonan,
Tone
Noonan.
Loc,
William Fichtner,
Hank Azaria, Jeremy Piven,
Henry Rollins,
young Natalie Portman.
Yeah, and this was so Natalie Portman,
Piven, Loc, Rollins.
They're all here.
Portman, they're all here. All the stars are out.
It is a crazy cast, like for sure. Like it is bananas.
Diane Venora, like every scene, there's just like amazing actors, and some of them their greatest roles. But Natalie Portman this is I think the first movie she did after The Professional. So this is kind of like, okay, The Professional wasn't a one-off thing. Like she's here to stay.
When was Beautiful Girls?
I want to say it was 96, but it could be right around the same time. So
96, just a year after this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is wow, geez. Just starts with The Professional with her. Yeah.
With a lot of child actors, like you don't really, not all of them are going to take to it. Not all of them are going to stick with it. Not all of them want to stick with it. So you need to kind of see like, okay, can they do something? Is there going to be another project that really works for them that they can follow it up with? And Natalie Portman's been working steadily since 1994. So I think she took off a little bit of time off going to college at some point in the early 2000s. But yeah.
I've only seen her in Star Wars 2, Attack of the Clones.
Why watch anything else?
That's the only thing you just watched on repeat.
Yeah, it's the only thing I've seen her in. So I'm sure she's really good in that. So
Yep. That pretty much sums up her entire career. If you've seen that, you don't need to see anything else.
I'm kidding. I've seen Garden State.
Dude, she's in so much. Like
she's in a lot. She's in a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of her stuff. I saw Mars Attacks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously she's. Oh man.
I mean, she was awesome in The Professional. I think everybody. Like she
so
totally
good.
like exploded onto the scene from The Professional. I think everybody expected her to be someone who stuck around and was going to have many great performances. But man, if you go back and actually now look at what she has done, it's mind blowing. She's been in so much and really good.
Yeah, I think at some point it's going to come around and she is going to, I think people are going to realize like how many good movies she's done over the course of her career, how consistent she's been.
Yeah, it's unreal.
So yeah, Natalie Portman, amazing. Just so many actors in this are great. But and going back to kind of the what the characters in this film is about, like I don't, a lot of people just see it as like an action, an action-y movie about this cop and the thief and all of that. But to me, it's a movie about people. It's really like a character piece and about the choices that people make. You know, all along the way, there's these characters are like coming to a crossroad and have to choose one thing or the other. And it's gonna like their survival, the chances of their survival like greatly depend on what decision they make. You know, for so many of these characters, like, do they want to do the robbery? Are they gonna, you know, is Macaulay's crew gonna stick together? Is loyalty to that more important? Is it more important to chase the score than to walk away, take a beat, and go for something more safe down the line? You know, is it more important to have a relationship with a woman you can finally, you know, or a partner you can finally connect with, or to live by your code and walk away from everything you've set up? You know, is it more important to chase the criminal, or, you know, keep your marriage that's hanging on by a thread? What's more important to you? You know,
Right.
Dennis Hayes, like every character has a choice to make, or multiple choices throughout the movie. So, you know, it really stood out this time. Like, I think I in my notes, I've kept track of it, of just like, wow, it's really like when you look at it from that perspective, it really hammers it home over and over and over in this movie. Yeah. And another thing about this movie is it's very LA. Like there's so much Los Angeles all over this movie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like you can recognize, it's funny because they scouted locations for like, I don't know, like 6 months at the end, towards the end of '94. And Michael Mann really wanted to pick locations that hadn't been used and weren't going to be obvious from other movies. But if you live in Los Angeles, like you can recognize some places or the area that some of this was shot in.
I mean, some of the places that he shot in were the same places he shot LA Takedown.
Which is true.
Oh, really? He's the same location.
So he'd been scouting way earlier than '94.
Yeah, the benefit of being having a fully funded practice run at your movie.
Yeah, I mean, for real.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure the opening scene takes place at the same spot. I think the bank heist takes place at on the same street, but Heat bank heist is expanded. Like, it's a larger scale and
Right.
and it goes further and has a greater reach. But like the initial, like leaving the lobby scene, I think is all kind of in the same general area.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah. Anyway.
I love that I really like when you can watch like one frame of a movie or 1 second of a movie and you can tell what director it is. And it's kind of all over this movie. Like I don't think any shot where you can't tell this is a Michael Mann movie. Mm-hmm. You know, from the way he frames certain things to his depth of focus in a lot of shots, that he'll have something in focus in the foreground and sort of in the, you know, in the background as well. The lighting style, of course, you know, the editing style, there's a certain pace to his films, but this may be his most epic. I'm trying to think of his more recent things, but this I think is like his most grand film of everything that he's done. This is like the epic piece. And it starts, you know, right when we meet our characters. You know, we see Macaulay, like, and Val Kilmer's character. How do you say, Chris Shaharlis? Is that how you say his last name?
I was never clear on the pronunciation.
Yeah.
Right.
Mann's always got interesting names. Like that's not an easy one to say.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's they're from his past, right?
Yeah, these are real people.
That's like his third grade, like, science teacher.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see them kind of preparing for, I mean, you don't realize it at the time, but you see them preparing for their first score, which is going to be taking down the armed truck for the bearer bonds, which is a scene that's going to go off the rails. But and then we see Vincent Hanna in his home life with the sloppiest sounding kisses in the history of film. Like, really turn that volume up on those kisses.
A lot of loud lot of loudness in this movie, though, right?
There is a lot of loudness.
Isn't like
The
Pacino's
gun-
footsteps like also just the loudest footsteps? I think, and
the gunshots are the loudest gunshots. Like it's like
the gunshots are like this is a dangerous weapon. Like those gunshots make me really afraid of the guns. Like they're just so overpowering.
Yeah, those they were intensified, but one of the reasons I love Michael Mann films as much as I do. We've talked about how on this show that I struggle with modern action films. You know, this action style, the Fast and the Furious style, whatever of like over the top action. I think it's after I saw Heat that I really prefer the realistic action scene. You know, all the action in this movie is as it would be in reality, and that's always very important. Authenticity in these shootouts is really important to Mann. Like, let's use the real gun. You know, the real gun. I mean, obviously they're movie guns, but you know, what would the weight of these guns be like? What would the sound of this gunfire? How loud would it be? That's part of what is so authentic about this is that, like that is what the volume is. And, you know, we'll come back to the shootout in a little bit, but, all of that, you know, it is definitely, I think they turned up, things with Pacino just to give Hannah that like heavy, intense, like he's a serious guy, you know, that he is, make him weigh just as much as Macaulay does.
You got I remember, I think there was footsteps or something. I'm like, boy, geez, like he's I gotta pay attention to him, you know.
Vincent Hanna is not a quiet guy. Like everything is big and loud.
It's like the footsteps at the opening of Point Blank.
Point Blank, yeah. Again, something I liked, the parallel between both teams was like how fluid they are with each other. That Macaulay's squad is like sort of like an elite unit that they've done this God knows how many times, and they're a real team. Each of them has a role. Each of them does something specific that they watch each other's backs. They can anticipate, you know, what each of them is supposed to do, what they're gonna do. They don't make mistakes. That's like, you know, the only people that make mistakes is the additional people to their team, but the foursome.
It's like Wangro, right? Like, I mean, that guy. You know, you can't trust the people that aren't part of the tight crew.
Yeah. You know, Wayne Grow it's a character that just kind of drives me nuts each time I watch it. Like, man, how did you let this guy?
How did this guy get away? Like, if you hadn't let this dude get away.
Yeah. It's like they needed one more person, and you know they got a gun for hire, and that was Wayne Grow, and it was just the wrong guy. And
it was like a friend of a friend's cousin. You're like, oh man, Wayne Grow. Damn it.
His name's Wayne Grow too, by the way. And that, you know, the intensity of the robbery, you know, the armed car robbery in the beginning, like, again, technically, I really appreciate how methodical Michael Mann is and mapping out, like, how would these guys in real life actually do this? Like, we're not going to watch the version of Wanted or, you know, Fast and the Furious that, like, how would those guys have done this robbery?
Pretty sure De Niro, if he wanted to, could curve a bullet, though. So let's...
True.
Let's not be too hard on Wanted.
But like this is a way to do it, you know, and Mann's working with technical advisors who, like, you know, from both sides that, you know, that would show him the authentic way. So, and then it goes off the rails, like right away with Wayne Grow, you know, executing one of the guards. Like, that was not the plan. They were not, you know, these guys are not out and out. Like, they will kill people, but that's not their plan.
Yeah, that's not what they want to do. They want to get the goods and get out.
Right.
Like
and
they're killing people is sloppy. Like it brings additional heat. Like you want to, you know, you want to get in and out.
Yeah, exactly. And you get that sense though of these guys must have done this God knows how many times. Like they're a seasoned group of professionals, and you know, we see, you know, after the robbery goes, you know, they do get away with the bonds, but they, you know, mistakes are made, and now Waingro's brought heat down, and they were sort of forced to execute the other guards because they were witnesses. So now they've executed, was it 3 people when they should have had 0 and just gotten away with it.
Yeah.
Those hockey masks, which are also a part of LA Takedown, very cool kind of look.
Retro goalie masks.
Yeah. You know, and then it comes to the diner scene when they're basically in a public setting going to agree to get rid of Waingro, and I love how they've got him boxed into the, you know, the booth, that like this guy doesn't even know how much trouble he's in.
Yeah.
And you know, but ends up kind of squirming his way out just by luck. And it always mystified me, like, where did Waingro go?
Yeah.
How did he roll away from them like that?
Just disappeared.
But on the flip side, you know, Vincent Hanna's crew is just as professional. Like we see when Hanna comes on the scene, and immediately we see him take charge and walk through. He walks through just from looking at the layout, like he can tell exactly what happened. That, you know, he can see the whole scene play out, and his team also just as fluid and falls in line of like, and you know, what the backstory is, what the, you know, get the background on the truck, and who are these people, and what are they going to do next. So and then the sort of cat and mouse chase begins. And then we go to their personal lives. You know, that's where, again, like we see the action, and then we split. We see, you know, what Hanna's situation is at home, and that his relationship with his wife is just barely hanging on. He's got the stepdaughter that has a terrible relationship with her, you know, dad that's sort of not really in the picture, and how kind of we learn as the movie goes on how devastating that is for her character. So he's got, you know, a really messy home life, and work is where he can focus. Work is where, like, he doesn't let any of that stuff in personally. He's just kind of a machine. And De Niro's sort of the opposite of that he has nothing at home so that he can just fully focus on the job. Where are you guys on Val Kilmer? Val Kilmer in the 90s.
Guy's huge, man.
Nothing better.
Right?
Right.
I mean, totally. Like, I mean, obviously Pacino and De Niro are the top guys, but Kilmer at this time is also a huge star. Like,
he's the number 3 build on the movie. I mean, it's like De Niro, Pacino, and then Kilmer right in the middle. So
right. Yeah, he's a big deal that gets totally overshadowed by Pacino and De Niro in this. And unfortunately, like in the long run, because of his health and like having to kind of stop acting, doesn't get nearly the credit that he deserves. But he was very much a top draw actor. You know,
he's Batman in 1995. That's like one of the top, you know, roles at the time.
Right. I mean, yeah, he's a very big deal.
Coming off The Doors and Thunderheart, it's, you know, and a lot of, you know, good roles throughout the 80s, but really kind of cementing himself as the 90s, you know, going into the 90s, and he holds his own. You know, it's another movie where I watch this and I don't see Val Kilmer. Like, I see that character, and he's able to, like, it's hard for us, you know, cinema goers, and to see past the actor and see the character. I mean, that's when you really know that, like, they're good, is when you can just feel that person that they're playing and not the actor behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, he's phenomenal in this. He's great.
Diane Venora too. You know, all the women in these guys' lives. These actresses are really good. And I think they had really difficult roles to play in this. Michael Mann's films are not known for being the friends of feminism.
Yeah.
They're very much guy movies about guys, and but the three women here, I think, do a lot with these characters because I think you can see their side of things. Yeah, and that may not be something that's necessarily scripted, but it's the way they're portraying these characters that you can get their situation and why they would be unhappy, and it makes sense that they do some of the things they do. With Diane Venora's character, like, you can completely understand that she would feel lonely, and her partner is absent 90% of the time. And yeah, maybe they have a great physical and sexual relationship, but what else is there? We see, I think, a couple of times in the movie where they're doing something social. They're having like the group kind of get-togethers, and Pacino and Hannah's got to go. He gets paged, and there's a murder, and he's got to drop what he's doing and leave. And Amy Brenneman, that really and I think she was she had just left NYPD Blue at the time, which I loved the first couple seasons, but her character was David Caruso's I think girlfriend in the first couple seasons, and when that character had to go bye-bye, they wrote her out as well. So this, I think, was her first movie after that, or one of her first projects, and she's really an innocent. She's one of the few completely innocent, unrelated characters here.
Yep.
Who sort of just casually trying to make conversation with Macaulay, and he rejects her, and then realizes that she's not like a narc, and they start to have a relationship, but she never knows. She has no idea who he really is.
She thinks he's a salesman.
Yeah, a metal salesman, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I sell metal. Oh yeah, that sounds legit.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, she's good. I think Ashley Judd is really good in this too. I think her performance is kind of low key, under the radar, but
yeah. And her first big role as well. I mean, she was in the Judds at this point.
Was she she wasn't in anything?
I mean, I think she may have been in a couple of things. I remember I think it was a TV movie, or maybe it was an HBO movie, where she played a young Marilyn Monroe. But this was certainly her biggest movie at the time, and really what helped launch her movie career. But yeah, another character who is a mother, and part of Val Kilmer's family life, and also very dissatisfied with the lifestyle her husband leads, and his. I think it's kind of insinuated he's got alcohol problems, and he's can be, when under alcohol, he's potentially abusive, and she just wants a way out. And who would you turn to? Hank Azaria, of course.
Yeah.
Hey, why not?
Hey,
he makes me laugh.
Yeah, there's a couple of actors who show up in this that I'm kind of bump me a little bit. Hank Azaria, how are you in this? Jeremy Piven, why? How did you get here?
You need people that can come in and give it good on the first take.
What did Piven done up to this point? Had he done PCU?
Yeah, he'd done. I think PCU. I want to say it was 94. But he was not.
He was not known.
No, I mean, it wasn't until I think a few years after this when he started to become more of a household name. Obviously, and then Entourage was the big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Amy Brenneman tells this story that after she was cast, she came to Michael Mann. She's like, okay, so here's what I think about Edie and her background, and this is why she's, got the issues she's got, and she created like this whole backstory, which obviously every actor should do, and really to know who that character is that you're playing, you need to know where they came from. And Michael Mann just kind of looked at her and was like, "No, you just love him. That's it. You just love him.
You just love him.
Yeah.
Thanks, director man.
Okay, so pretty straightforward. Don't need to know why. Don't you just love him.
That's a good direction.
It is. He broke it down and kept it simple, but
keep it easy.
A lot of actors just need a little more than this. Al Pacino's his portrayal of Hannah. This has got to be. It's this and Scarface with the most kind of memorable one-liners, right?
I don't know. Scent of a woman. Hooah!
That's true. Yeah. This is really, I guess it started with Scarface, continued with Scent of a Woman, and completely solidifies here in Heat with the yelling version of Pacino, right?
I mean, I guess in Scarface, I don't pick it up. It's really Scent of a Woman where it's like, I feel like it's just a really like central aspect of that character. And from that point on, for a while, that just became his thing. Like Devil's Advocate, like all of it was just like, just loud and intense kind of yelling.
Yeah. When you go back to 70s Pacino, like one of the only scenes he raises his voice in is the last scene in the first Godfather.
Yeah.
And otherwise he's very soft spoken through that, maybe a couple scenes in Dog Day Afternoon, but
I was gonna say, like at the end when he's out yelling, outside
when he's
the
out
bank
front,
or whatever.
Yeah. But otherwise he's very quiet. And then Scarface, it's played over the top because of, character does massive amounts of cocaine and drugs and but starting with Scent of a Woman, it's pretty consistent that there are going to be scenes where Al Pacino is yelling.
Maybe Glengarry Glen Ross. I'd have to go back and see his performance in that. It's been a long time.
But it's
a
pretty
very
high
12
energy
Angry Men type kind of.
Yeah, Ricky Roma and Glengarry is high energy, but he's not yelling, I don't think. But he's definitely going down that road for sure. So, then that continued. So,
Donnie Brasco.
Yep.
Any
Another
Given
actor.
Sunday. Yep.
Yeah.
God.
Another actor that popped up here that you almost, you if you blink, you missed him is Bud Cort from Harold and Maude.
Yeah.
Plays the manager of the diner where Dennis Haysbert's character is working, who's just kind of brutal to this guy, and he's
man, that's Bud Cort, huh?
Yeah. Huh. Bud Cort, whose career in the we talked about this, dig way deep in our archives for our Harold and Maude episode at ReconCinemation.com, but we talked about his career and it was a rising star through the 70s, and I think a car crash kind of derailed that, and he would never get back to the level he was at, but he did pop up here and there, and this is one of those roles. It's like, oh, there he is. He's still around, playing kind of a jerk here, but Haysbert, of course, from Legendary in a film called Navy SEALs. Anyone who hasn't seen it, you should check it out immediately.
Or any Prudential commercial from 2005 till now.
But Haysbert is an actor who's worked for years and years. Major League, was a great character there, but really didn't become popular until 24.
Major League.
President Palmer.
David Palmer. That's right.
Yeah. But his character here, who's not a major character in LA Takedown, is, trying to go the straight and narrow. He's out of prison, trying to put his life together. And we just see kind of separate scenes of like, why is this character in this movie? We keep kind of cutting to him and his I don't know if that's his wife or girlfriend, trying to keep him walking the straight line. And that character finally comes full circle with when he crossed paths with Macaulay's crew right before the big robbery. But I love the scene where, once I really like how this film, how it all kind of plays out, that like, how does Hannah eventually get on the trail of Macaulay and his crew? And it's really Tom Sizemore's kind of slip up of using the word, the term slick, that's like just a nickname that he calls people. And, Hannah's hitting the streets and trying to get to all his informants and finding out anything about this crew. And in a scene with, of all people, Tone Loc, who also pops up in this movie, ends up revealing that, he knows, he drops the name Slick. So Hannah's able to put two and two together that like, okay, there's a connection here. So he initially thinks that Sizemore's character is the leader of the crew. And
right.
because
like
that's all he knows,
guy,
right? Like
right.
when we see him spying, they're spying on Sizemore and Kilmer, like all of them, and De Niro, they're all out to dinner with their
coming out of the restaurant or whatever.
Yeah, that he doesn't even know who Macaulay is. Like,
right.
He's like a completely new character, has no idea that this guy's actually the one running things.
Yeah.
So
like,
then
I love that scene. See, that scene bookended with the scene at the shipyard. It's like, again, just the crew mirroring each other and what they do to research.
Yeah, like they dig into each other. Once they find out who they're really dealing with, once Hannah finds out about Macaulay and Macaulay figures out through Nate, which is John Voight's character, like who is the guy that's got the heat on him, he does his own digging into Hannah, and they're just really after each other. The scene where they're doing the other, they're about to break in, or they're in the middle of a break-in to another place, another location, and like Hannah and his team are there ready to catch them in the act. And that was another, based on a real situation with Chuck Adamson, that they were on a stakeout, and I think I want to say in the real version, in one of the other cops like knocked over a bottle of water or something, but either way, like in this, it's like the cop sitting down and leaning against the side of the truck and making that indentation sound. Like that's all it took, was one sound, and Macaulay is so like in tune with it that it's not worth the risk. Like he will walk away. Like they're literally, Val Kilmer's character is like drilling into the safe or whatever it is they're going into. They're like moments away from getting in, that it's like, nope, walk away now, because we've done essentially nothing. Like they're not gonna, like, if they're onto him, they're not gonna get him for breaking and entering. They're gonna wait until he's actually stealing something.
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant scene, and the way it's cut together, and they're sort of like, again, Brent, to your analogy, mirror images of each other. They're like staring right into the camera from opposite ends. Really, really beautiful scene. And Hannah's reaction, like, Macaulay pulls the plug, they all walk away, like, pull up stakes and just get back in the van and leave. They've really done nothing. And Hannah's reaction to it, of just like, he's so angry that like he can't do anything, like nothing's gonna make that right. And then quickly Macaulay turning it around on them, that knowing they're being watched, and going and like really vocally mapping out a plan of the next thing they're gonna do. So as soon as they leave, knowing Hannah's gonna go walk through the same steps, he's backtracked, and now he's photographing Hannah and his crew.
Yeah. Now
like, and then Hannah realizing it.
Yeah.
Like,
that scene's awesome. I love that scene.
It's so good that they know how good the other one is, that they're right on each other's tails, and the mutual respect there.
Yeah.
You know, and then coming around to the diner scene, that Hannah's just like, you know what? I'm just going to talk to this guy. Like they're kind of obsessed with each other, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's like, it feels like for each of them, it's like an addiction to outmaneuver the other one.
Well, I mean, it's that it's that classic cat and mouse, you know, like they're hunting each other in a way, right? Like they're trying to outsmart the other one, not get caught. Like it's a great like building of suspense, and like that moment in the diner, having them kind of face off verbal, you know, like with verbal wits, or, you know, is kind of perfect. And it's what every person who's been tracking De Niro and Pacino career up to this point wanted to see.
Yeah.
Like it's like it's zero action, but probably the most recognizable scene of the movie, right?
Yeah. And so much being said, you know, literally and reading between the lines of these characters and what they, you know, having a real human moment. But like the way they shot the scene, there was a 2-shot that I don't think he used. I actually don't think he used any of the 2-shot in the film, that we go right into the tight over the shoulder close up and close up and close up and close up. And it's just like, you know, these characters, how on edge would they be? You know, like,
yeah, they're like in each other's face.
Yeah. And then like, apparently like every time De Niro moved, like Pacino would kind of counter that as Hannah would, that like his hand's probably on his gun like the whole time, that this guy could either bolt or pull his own, you know, try to shoot his way out of there or what. Yeah. But they end up playing it cool the whole way through and emotionally connecting with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so well done. That's such a great scene.
Yeah, it's really, again, like I went through a phase where like, yeah, it's genius. And then watching him like, well, you know, it's good. Like it's good performances, but like nothing really happens. And then now I'm back like, no, it's brilliant.
But it's the first time.
Yeah.
Since then, we've had 20 plus years of time for it to, or not 20 plus, but you know, like close to whatever, for it to sink in. Like,
well, it was a huge deal for these guys to do this movie together. That, remember, go back to 95. This is, you know, the internet is just becoming a thing. But there's no streaming services. Like there's no, the amount of product being made was so much less. So to get actors of this caliber together was a really big deal.
Right. I mean, because it's not like these guys were just sitting around, like they were working, like they were constantly working. And I mean, yeah,
and it kind of paralleled the two actors' careers, that like, you know, they were kind of competing with each other. Like, who's the better actor, De Niro or Pacino? You know, you kind of picked one or the other, and, you know, who does the better movies and who's the bigger star? And, you know, finally, like, I don't know, it was something really poetic about the two of them playing these characters. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't think it can be overstated how big a deal it was. Like the only other thing that I can think of, like for my growing up in the 80s, 90s brain that could have compared to it, is if it was like Stallone and Arnold were in a movie together going toe to toe before the Expendables. You know what?
For action movies, or one could
like
say
in the 80s, like late 80s.
Yeah.
Like if that would have happened, like that would have blown my mind.
Yep. Kind of like how I felt when
or Freddie or Jason. Yeah. When that happened, blew my mind.
The showdown everyone wanted to see. Or you could say Stallone and, I don't know, Kurt Russell in Tango and Cash. So
we got Tango and Cash. You know what I mean?
It
was like, and we got it in a timely manner. Like,
yeah,
you know, De Niro and Pacino together. I mean, because they always did movies that were like, they were always great in, and very easily arguments could have been made that you could have interchanged them, and the other could have played that character or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they were like kind of on the same trajectory. They had the same sort of background of movie that they would have done. I mean, it was incredible. It's like going back and thinking about it, you know, is, I just don't know. You don't get that anymore. Like it's just that kind of stuff I don't know if that happens anymore when it comes to actors.
I don't know. It's there's so many projects now, and there's so many big actors that it's hard to say. You know, again, we got it later with like The Irishman, and we got De Niro and Pacino again, but now throw in Joe Pesci, and you know, there's another sort of dream triangle. But
that was fun.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, once upon a time in Hollywood, you have Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. That they're, you know, big, huge names of today's era.
But they're not facing off. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think the fact that they're like actually competing against each other in this movie, and they're like, it's not only the fact that they're in the movie together, but it's the context in which they're acting against each other.
Right.
That also just makes it so, it's such an effective, like, presentation. Like everything is just like, it's like perfect, you know?
Yeah.
Audiences would experience this again with Banderas and Liu in X versus Sever.
That's, yes.
I would say
I would have to see that.
Arguably the better film.
Yeah.
What's remind us the full title of that?
Yeah, what is that again?
Oh, what is the? I don't know.
Take your time. I'll edit it together.
Yeah, right. Ballistic.
What is that movie?
It's Ballistic X versus Sever. 2002.
That's a real movie.
It's the perfect film.
They're two like top assassins or something.
Yeah.
And they like, that's the name, Ballistic X Sever. Because
wait, and who's in it?
Antonio Banderas plays Jeremiah X. Lucy Liu plays Sever.
The dream lineup you didn't know you needed.
Wasn't Banderas and Stallone in a movie called Assassins? Is that the same?
Oh yeah, come on, with Julianne Moore. Yeah,
Assassins is great. That's a great movie.
Directed by Richard Donner.
Yeah, sure, all that. But
so finally, Banderas and Liu on screen.
After all
that time of wanting.
We've been waiting, and Hollywood made it happen.
Hollywood made it happen. So we'll, you know,
give Hollywood enough time to come around.
Yep. It always does. But let's talk about the action scene of the movie, the robbery of the bank robbery downtown. Again, really watching LA Takedown, it's like bizarre, like it's so identical. You know, I mean, it's not shot for shot, but it is pretty much beat for beat. You know, the same scene.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, and I think from an action scene sequence, like, I mean, I feel like it's right up there with things like, you know, the beach scene in Saving Private Ryan and stuff like that. Like just the way that it's like done and composed, and like the energy of it, and like, I don't know, I think it's really top notch. It was a lot cooler though before some fucking morons did it for real in 97, but like,
they had to rob the bank the same way.
Yeah.
Well, the North Hollywood bank robbery in 97, I think it was.
Yep.
That the North Hollywood shootout. That was this movie. There was concern about we've talked about on the show before about the copycat kind of syndrome of when a movie gets popular, that there were, you know, a couple of thieves who had the same kind of getup, more like the, you know, in the initial armed car takedown in the beginning of the film, that they had, you know, more of that kind of look, but they were loaded, you know, like bulletproof vests and fully padded.
Well, didn't they have like armored helmets and shit on?
They had armored helmets,
it was
machine
like crazy.
guns.
Yeah.
and it's in North Hollywood, tried to rob a bank and had a huge shootout with the cops. And when they eventually, they lost, but when they kind of checked out their apartments, of course, they had a copy of Heat, and that was to blame.
And it also, I mean, it was because of that robbery that a whole lot of like gun legislation in California and everything got passed,
right.
But it's like, you can go and look it up, man. I remember when that happened, like seeing it play on the news, and I was like, holy shit, this looks like straight up from a movie. Like, it was kind of crazy. I mean, these dudes were like fully armored, and they were like just standing out there getting shot at from multiple angles, and the bullets were just like kind of bouncing off of their shit. And they had these, automatic rifles that they were like just sitting there.
Shit, like, that sounds super awesome.
Not super. It's awesome in a movie.
It's awesome in a movie.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem. It's awesome in a movie.
Yeah.
And of course, no, you don't want that in real life. But
it's crazy. You can find the footage on YouTube. Like, it's still out there. It's bananas.
Is there shootout footage? Like,
yeah, for sure, dude.
Oh, that sounds awesome. All right.
But it is strange how it does mirror this. Like
yeah, totally.
Like Macaulay's crew is they're very precise, and it is their game is thrown off initially because Danny Trejo's his character is we see just a quick scene of him calling in and saying there's some heat on him, he can't make the score, he's got to try to lose whoever's on his tail. We don't see who that is, but and that's where the Dennis Haysbert character, they're in the diner when this happens, and coincidentally that's the diner that Dennis Haysbert's character is working in. So when De Niro and I think Val Kilmer see him, they're like, we need a driver, like, you want in? And he and that's where his character has to make that life choice of, I've been working so hard to go straight, do I say no and keep going and live this miserable life of going straight, or do I say screw it and do the score with them and get however much money, right. So he opts to throw it away and go with them, body slamming poor Bud Cort along the way.
Oof, yeah.
But so now, when the score is when they're mid robbery, someone calls in to rat them out and to Hannah, and Hannah races his crew down there to catch them in the act. And quickly they realize, like, this is no regular crew doing this robbery, that Macaulay's crew are full professionals and fully ready to fight back. And it's just the choreography of that scene is so brilliantly done with Macaulay, like, walking on top of the famous shot of him walking on top of the tellers, desks, and telling them, like, this is not personal, like, this is not your money, it's insured, you're going to get it back, just let us do this. But at the same time, like, when they punch the, like, bank manager, and, like, he says, let it bleed, like, like, there's that intensity, like, don't mess with these guys either, because they will take you down. Yeah. And Michael Mann had those bags weighted down so that it would feel like, what does $12 million really feel like? That you can tell when they're tossing these bags, like, those are heavy. That's not movie money. That's like real stuff in there.
Yeah.
So I've never robbed a bank, but if I were to rob yeah, I know, crazy, right? To think. But there was something in that scene where they go in and they put the money in the bag, right? And the money's all wrapped up in its big kind of like blocks of however much money that is. And they throw it in the bag or put it in the bag, and then they slice the plastic
to loosen it up.
Yeah, but why? What's the point?
Because it loosens the money up and makes it's easier to carry than one, like, solid brick. It can flop around a little bit, and it's literally just easier to throw over your shoulder.
See, John's robbed a bank.
I have robbed a number of banks, so this is literally what I've done. No.
All right.
But yeah, that's
I was just like, I don't understand exactly like what the point. Like if they were gonna just slice it open and just take the plastic out, but they just like it's like a quick slice on the top, and then he like pounds the bag down a couple times.
It's so the weight can
to break it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Again, that's a little detail that's like brilliant. It makes it real. Like it puts it in real life and not in movie mode.
I'm taking notes so when I rob my first bank.
And
like,
the score, the score, you know, that's running along that like is perfectly like it's like almost like a heartbeat. You know, it's getting the intensity. It's like keeping that pace. And you know, Sizemore walks out, and it's like, oh, Sizemore made it good. You know, like, that's all I care about is Sizemore gets out of this. And that. You know, that shot of Val Kilmer walking across with that big smile on his face, like they actually did it. They actually pulled it off. They're standing feet away from the getaway car, and he catches the cop like right across, like behind, you know, across the street. Like he sees them, they're onto them, and his immediate switching gears and just pulls that gun up, and then the shootout, like probably in my mind, this is probably my favorite movie shootout because of the realism that goes 10 straight minutes, something like that.
It's a big one.
Yeah, that they shot it I think over 3 weekends in downtown LA, where they could really like, it's pretty quiet in downtown LA in the mornings, on the weekends, so you could take over that. But and watch it's like military precision, that, you know, the way they're maneuvering and covering each other, and it's like, oh my god,
they're like moving in waves, and it's like absolutely
the police are quantity, like there's way more cops than there are, you know, there's 3 or 4 criminals here, but these guys are so good that they're overwhelming the cops. The cops don't stand a chance against this, you know, kind of gunfire and strategy.
I mean, they're like out. The cops are outgunned. Like the cops may have more people, but they're carrying like heavy weapons. Until Al Pacino shows up and he's got like a belt gun or some. I was like, what the hell? Like that machine gun's crazy.
Oh yeah.
That great. Yep. It's it's really like, you can tell once Pacino gets there, once Hannah gets there, like he's the only like chance of a counterattack, because again, like what we've learned along the way is Hannah is also, you know, comes from a military career, so he's gonna know that, like he's gonna think the same way Macaulay is. So, and I think I want to say, is it Wes Studi's character that like shoots out Dennis Haysbert and like, because Haysbert's the getaway driver and they're in the car, but he gets shot and they have to like go on foot. And there's a shot of Kilmer, the way Kilmer like whips the gun up and like spins around, that apparently they actually study in the military. Like this guy's an actor, but this is the perfect way to like hold your weapon, carry your weapon, change positions. That I guess that's an actor doing his job. He's that believable. So and you know, where they split up, where Kilmer's character shot, and Macaulay's got another choice his character has to make is like, do you take the money you've got and run, or this is your best friend,
right?
Does he mean that much to you? You're gonna like try to save him, which he does. So the two of them split from Sizemore's character, who's kind of left on his own, and that's where you get, like, as much as we, you know, talked about how much we love Sizemore in this movie, the guy picks up a little kid to use as a shield. Like, that's a reminder, like, he's a bad dude.
Yeah, he's the worst kind of people.
And Hannah's the one like right on his tail. He's like running, he doesn't realize it, but he's running directly into Hannah. Like he's running away from like a group of cops that are chasing him, but directly into Hannah, who's just waiting there with his gun. And I really like the scene in LA Takedown as well, which actually matches the script, the original script, perfectly, that he can't get the shot with the rifle. So he puts it down and pulls up his pistol and, you know, and takes him down in like somebody's front yard, which kind of mirrors the real Macaulay death, but, and not in that, like, you know, Pacific Design kind of center kind of location.
Oh, yeah,
So, yeah. And unfortunately, that's the end of our Tom Sizemore in the film. But yeah, but great, memorable way to go out for sure. And then it's really a chase, like a really serious, like the stakes are even higher, that De Niro's trying, Macaulay's trying to find his way out the whole rest of the film. And Nate has gotten him a way out. Like he's arranged a whole thing for, like, here's your escape plan. Like the plane's going to touch down at LAX for 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to get on and get out, and you're good. And then that's like, they say goodbye to each other, and, that's his opportunity to go. But De Niro, Macaulay is torn with that. Like, I can't let this slide. Like, Wayne, whoever, I think he knows at this point that it's Wayne Grow. Oh no, he goes to track down, he realizes that it's Danny Trejo who turned on them. And when he goes to confront Trejo, realizes, gets it out of him before he puts him out of his misery, that it was Wayne Grow that was the one behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Van Zandt, right?
Wayne Grow working with Van Zandt. Yeah. William Finkner.
Finkner.
Yeah.
That's right. So,
who, by the way, who loves William Finkner? Like, another actor who's been so good for so long.
Yeah. So good to see him here.
David, what's your favorite Finkner?
This one.
Good answer.
Probably the right answer too, but not Armageddon.
He's wonderful.
He's pretty good in Armageddon.
He has a gun in space. Like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, he's great here. As kind of another guy who's in over his head, like does not know who he's messing with Macaulay. He's in case you haven't seen it, like he's the one whose bearer bonds are stolen in the beginning of the film, and he's trying to get him back, and also trying to get revenge for them being stolen in the first place. So, when he connects with Wayne Grow, it's like the two of them have a personal sort of vendetta against Macaulay. But Macaulay makes the choice to like pursue vengeance instead of just straight like leaving, and ultimately that's what his undoing is, that he's opted to go for Van Zandt, does it, I guess go for Trejo, who's his own guy, success there, goes for Van Zandt, successful there, and Hannah's lost track of him at this point, that Macaulay's so good that he's slipped all of his tails, and Hannah really has given up on his side, that like they literally don't know where he is anymore, and Hannah goes home, or goes home to just throw the towel in, and that's where we see his personal life unraveling, paralleling with Macaulay's, that
right.
He walks in, his wife is in the middle of an affair with somebody, and the scene where Hannah just take the TV is like, that's you can have his wife, but you can't have his TV.
That's right.
So he goes to his hotel, and where he finds Natalie Portman's character, who's attempted suicide. Sort of, it's interesting that she chose his hotel room to do it in. Almost like it was almost like she didn't really want to do it. Like she wanted to be discovered or saved by him.
Right.
Yeah, she seemed like she was having issues with her mom, right? So she feels probably closer to him. Even though you don't really see a lot of it, of their relationship.
No, but you can tell there's a warmth between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here's this. Here he's a cop. He doesn't even see that that this girl is going through issues, and he's seen some terrible things in his career, but I didn't. He definitely wasn't expecting that. Yeah. So I'm sure that was sort of a wake up call to him as far as like where his life is heading, really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it brings him back, like, back to reality and out of this game with Macaulay, and like, this is real life, this is happening now, and it needs obviously immediate attention. And it's a nice moment between him and Diane Venora's character, and when they're, you know, at the like he rescues her, Natalie Portman brings her to the hospital, and it's, you know, just in time, and he's in the waiting room with Diane Venora, and they're just like what happened, like we don't hate each other, so what are we doing to each other? And they sort of make peace there, and she gives him permission to like go back on the chase. And that shot of him like running down the stairs, he's like giddy like a little kid, that he's like, mom's letting him out, mom's letting him go play with his friends, you know. And I don't know, just a great like kind of shot into the mind of that character. And the final showdown that you know, he tracks down, he realizes where Macaulay's going, and Macaulay's already done it. You know, at this point, Macaulay's in the hotel and he knows where Waingro is, and it's a great scene of how he maneuvers his way up to the hotel room and pulls the fire alarm, and so everyone's evacuating, and he gets his moment of vengeance. And as he comes out and he's about to, like, he's gonna do it, he's gonna get his girl and they're gonna get away with it. And at that same moment, he sees Hannah, like, you know, in the distance, like coming after him, and he knows, like, I gotta live by my code, and I've got to drop everything and run and break the heart of the person he's finally like let himself open up to.
Yeah, really awful.
Yeah, I mean, poor Edie, who has no idea. I mean, at this point, we jumped over it, but you know, he does tell her what his real life is, and she's accepted him, and she's gonna go with him, and but she's left again, and we get the chase, the final chase between the two actors. And I remember vividly, like, the first time watching this scene and really not knowing what was going to happen. Like, I wanted Macaulay to get away, but it felt like, how could he? One of them has to go down, and who's it going to be?
Yeah, I think it had to end the way that it did. I don't think, I don't know, it wouldn't feel as complete if he'd have gotten away.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful shot, you know, where that, like, he Macaulay's gunned down, and which is what Hannah said he would do, that if it came down to it, he would do that. He did it. But like, the mutual respect, you know, they have for each other is still there, and that like connection, and that shot, the last shot of the movie of the two of them like holding hands as Macaulay dies, is spoiler alert, that you know, is really kind of perfect. It's the perfect image for this film. And you know, the score playing over is great. And yeah,
I don't think Macaulay would have wanted it any other way either. I think he would have wanted to be taken down by somebody who was like his equal.
Yeah.
That he looked at as his equal.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I remember feeling, as the credits come up, like, oh, like this, like I felt exhausted at the end of this movie, just emotionally, like, so into it, and loved the film on so many levels. And watching it this time, it was the first time I had felt that way about this movie since, like, I initially saw it.
I hadn't watched this movie in a while. It was kind of nice to see it again. I also felt like it had been such a long duration of time that I kind of got to re-enjoy it again, almost like for the first time. I mean, I knew things that were going to happen, but I'd also forgotten a lot of, like, some of the more nuanced and smaller things that that are done so well.
Yeah, there's a lot of little details in this movie that, like, I don't know, I felt really worked.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Cinematography by Dante Spinotti, who done, you know, quite a number of Michael Mann's films, and the score by Elliot Goldenthal, with I think a lot of Moby. There's a name from the '90s and early 2000s. Moby doing some of the music as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this soundtrack. Like I remember I had summer of '98. I had some stuff go on that was not so great in my life, and this was a soundtrack I listened to like on repeat. That was just like in a dark place, but love like it's a great score.
Yeah.
Should we? Why don't we talk a little box office glory, and then we'll talk about what happened after this film.
Okay.
All right. So Heat has a $60 million budget. I'm sure a percentage of that went to Misters De Niro and Pacino, as well as Kilmer, commanding top dollar at the time.
I would imagine.
Yeah. It opens up December 15th, 1995 at number 3. Opening up against Jumanji and the original Jumanji film and Sabrina. Jumanji was number 1 that week. Toy Story, as Brent mentioned in the beginning, in week 4 stayed at number 2. So quite a long run for Toy Story. Heat comes in at number 3. It had an $8.4 million opening weekend. It ends up with a 67.4 domestic run, but 187 million worldwide. So, yeah, it definitely does huge internationally, and I think in Japan it was a huge movie. So, does really well overall. But box office wise, number 25 of 1995. It's sandwiched between Outbreak and Waiting to Exhale, 2 very similar films.
So similar.
Top at the box office in '95 was Toy Story, Batman Forever, another Val Kilmer film, and Apollo 13. So, but the interesting thing to me, looking at it, is especially the caliber of people involved in this movie. Do you know how many Oscars it won?
It has to be in the dozens.
It's a whopping 0.
No.
0 Oscars.
Yeah.
At a time where you would think these are probably the most Oscar caliber people involved, and nothing.
Look at this. What is this?
Yeah.
Nothing.
That's kind of bananas.
And looking at it now, what won Best Picture was Braveheart, right?
Yeah, Braveheart definitely won Best Picture the year that it was nominated.
Right. What has more of a shelf life? There's a lot of problems with Braveheart.
I still love Braveheart. Fuck your problems.
Whoa.
No, but I mean, once it got, there was a whole thing, like once it got out that Braveheart was so fictionalized from the real, character, I think it lost a lot of street cred.
Sure.
Along with, the Mel Gibson issues.
We make movies. Yeah, the Mel Gibson issue, I think, is probably the bigger one that I have problems with. But
like if you're going to change it so much,
he got himself in some trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did something happen with Mel Gibson?
What happened to poor Mel?
Too much of the woo and the wee and the bad attitudes, man.
Bad attitudes.
if you're going to change it so much from the real person it's based on, like, why not just make it a fictional character at that point? Yeah, then I think that would have, I don't know, would have probably in the long run helped the movie if it was just, not William Wallace. It would just use a different name.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe. I sure. I guess that aspect of it doesn't really bother me that much. Like, I think, how true historically is Spartacus? How true historically?
It's exactly what it's. A Spartacus is actually a documentary.
It's a documentary. That's why there's watches on their arms.
The guy just looks like Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, movies are meant to embellish.
Yeah.
Like that.
I think it just nowadays it gets called out when it's something that's supposed to be a true story is like way off.
Well, yeah,
reality.
I think nowadays, yes, I think if people are expecting this is based on a true story to be true, then yeah. But I mean, even nowadays, I mean, you get movies that say this is based on a true story, but they like are very tongue in cheek about it.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I think factual stuff is what people are hoping for in a lot of these cases. But also, you have to understand it's still movies. You know, like it's got to be entertaining. Like I don't actually believe that. You know, I don't know. I just watched a movie about how a video game got distributed in the US and Japan on handheld and gaming consoles. I'm not going to say any names about it. The movie's freaking awesome.
Ooh.
I liked it quite a bit. Found it incredibly entertaining. I do not believe all of the things that are in there that they use for entertainment were part of the actual process of getting this game distributed.
Well, I think we're sort of swinging back in a different direction right now, like literally right now. That like for a long time it was about like, no, we need to tell the real story of what happened, like very exactly. And now maybe it's swinging like it's a mix. It's okay to do a mix of like this was real, but parts of this are complete separate storyline that we're making for an entertaining movie. So we'll see as time goes on.
Yeah. By the way, the movie I'm talking about is Pixels. So
the classic Pixels.
Well,
kidding. If you haven't seen Tetris, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
You can bring it back to, our boy Mel, he wanted to tell historical stories. So, he wanted to tell the story of Jesus, the Passion of the Christ. He wanted to tell it. We don't know how much of that is based on a true story. I don't know. We don't know what's real. So, it's you just want, but you want to tell good stories either way. So
every movie that Mel Gibson did was based on a real story, like Conspiracy Theory and Ransom, and
but
Maverick.
He didn't direct those.
I know.
I mean, he did direct Braveheart, Man Without a Face, Apocalypto, and Passion of the Christ. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think he's probably done some other ones, but
Hacksaw Ridge as well.
Oh, did he direct that?
He did.
He did.
Yes.
With a 83-pound Andrew Garfield playing a soldier.
Yeah. Carrying people down a mountain, like a cliff, not even a mountain, like straight up down a cliff.
But I think when you look back at it, Heat has more of a shelf life than some of the top movies of that year, especially than it had at the time.
Heat definitely should have gotten more cred when it came out. I was a huge fan of Braveheart, but like Heat is phenomenal.
Like, how did both Pacino? I mean, I think the simple answer is they canceled each other out, but
probably.
But looking back at it, how did neither of them get a Best Actor nomination? How did Michael Mann not
even nominated?
Yeah. Not even nominated. Like, this was not in the top 5 of acting performances of the year. Are you crazy?
Who won that year?
Oh, God.
It wasn't Mel Gibson.
So Nicolas Cage for Leaving Las Vegas.
That's right. Leaving Las Vegas. Also a very good performance.
Okay. Yeah, I can't knock on that.
David, since you're looking at who are the other Best Actor nominees?
He beat out Richard Dreyfuss for Mr. Holland's Opus.
Wait,
buddy.
Stop right there. Stop right there. I don't even need to hear the rest. This is insane. Okay, go ahead.
That's bananas, but hey, good for Dick.
Anthony Hopkins for Nixon, Sean Penn for Dead Man Walking, and Massimo Troisi for The Postman.
The Postman, yeah.
The Postman?
Il Postino.
Il Postino.
Oh, I thought it was like,
and I think he died after it came out. So
I think it was Kevin. I thought it was Kevin Costner's The Postman. I was like, who got nominated? What now?
That was 98, I think. But
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
because 95 is going back. 95 is when Waterworld released.
Yeah, So Costner was busy that year, but
busy.
I don't know about that. So that's a very arguable list to exclude.
Yeah,
Pacino, but also De Niro for not only one but 2 great performances that year. So with Casino and Heat.
Yeah. That's kind of crazy. What other movies got nominated for? Are we still on that page? Did we shut that down? Is that
No, I have it
still
open.
live? What movies got nominated for Best Picture?
Best Picture.
I mean, I know
Apollo 13.
I know
Apollo
Braveheart.
13. Yeah.
Yeah.
Best Picture: Braveheart, Apollo 13, Babe,
My God,
Il Postino, and Sense and Sensibility.
Again, looking at the
Babe
shelf life
over fucking.
Yeah.
Guys.
So-
This is why now that I'm older and wiser, I don't even watch the Academy Awards anymore. Unless somebody's getting punched on stage, like I'm not even going to turn it on.
Right? Who needs it?
But looking back at Heat, like it's got two hugely influential scenes, but with the diner scene and the robbery, the bank robbery downtown, and the shootout, that super influential to our generation. And Christopher Nolan with The Dark Knight, just completely admitted was very influenced by Heat. Michael Bay's Ambulance, which I mentioned earlier, but Grand Theft Auto was very much based off of that. And a lot of directors just in putting their action scenes together, and he has become a model for that. Many of these actors, it's their greatest performance or one of their top 2 or 3 greatest performances. Michael Mann, where do you guys, so we talked about where I stand on it. Where are you guys on this one with Michael Mann?
As far as best movie and whatnot?
Or favorite, whatever, however you want to categorize it. Is it up there, or is there what's ahead of it? From what you've seen.
What's ahead of it? I don't know. I mean, this might be my favorite, but I like Collateral an awful lot.
Collateral's great, right?
I do like Collateral a lot.
I really like Collateral.
I like Last Mohicans. I understand that it's probably not. It's insensitive in ways, I'm sure, but I like it a lot. Manhunter is great. Those are probably my top 4.
And we will. Manhunter is a whole episode we're going to come back to down the road. So
yeah, I guess I like The Insider as well, but only. But I in particular I like that one because I did a documentary when I was interning in LA, and it was called Secrets Through the Smoke, which I don't know that it actually ever released, but it was with Jeffrey Wigand, who The Insider is based on. And I basically was just a young kid who smoked a lot of cigarettes at the time. And for a day, I just got to sit with Jeffrey Wigand, and he would tell me why smoking's not good. And literally the day that I worked with him, I quit smoking. It's I'm not going to.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
wow.
So that was pretty cool, just experience, working with the guy that the movie was based on. But yeah.
The Insider is great. It's I think one of Michael Mann's most solid overall movies. That I like Public Enemies, but there's I think it is up and down at parts, and not everybody loves that movie, but The Insider is really solid.
I remember being disappointed with Public Enemies. It wasn't as good as I was hoping as it was going to be, I think, is where I left.
Yeah, I liked it more on multiple viewings. It kind of got better, but I am looking forward to when we come back around to Manhunter. There's a lot to talk about there, and it's my my favorite of all the Hannibal Lecter related films. Very different from Silence of the Lambs, which everyone else loves, but
stories from the set of Public Enemies. Anyone want to hear one or two?
Yeah,
go for it. Yeah,
they filmed in Chicago mostly. And they filmed it at the actual theater that Al Capone was gunned down in, and all that stuff. And
Dillinger, you mean
Dillinger. Or Dillinger.
Yep.
Capone. What the fuck? And And what do you call it? But like there was Christian Bale was in the movie. He was very nice to a lot of people, and he would run across to the Starbucks across Lincoln Avenue. But he would ask a bunch of crew and other actors and like, hey, what do you guys want? What do you guys want? I'm buying. Go across. It was, that would happen occasionally. So by all reports back then, Christian Bale, nice guy.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And then, but supposedly there was a time Michael Mann was having a serious conversation with someone from, I believe it's Sony, maybe I think made Public Enemies. I don't know. And it was overheard that someone was telling Michael Mann that from the studio, this is absolutely not a Michael Mann film. This is a Johnny Depp film, and shut him down. Could be apocryphal, could have happened, could be embellished, could be made up. But that's what I heard.
That's rough.
And that's your
Michael Mann
gossip.
film is a Michael Mann film. That's
I know.
for sure. That
Yeah.
you know, it's his films are as distinct as Tarantino's or Spielberg's or Scorsese's.
I don't think that's what they were saying.
No,
Yeah.
I know what they meant, but yeah, like who's going to bring people in the theaters? It's Johnny Depp. Yeah,
Yeah, we care.
Well, I
more
mean,
about-
especially at this time, right?
Yeah,
Like
back
Johnny
then,
Depp was like the biggest shit
yeah.
on film at the time.
Yeah.
He was.
he's only
Yeah.
I think 3 Pirates movies deep at this point. So
3 Pirates, dude.
Well, it was the third one that really started to turn people off on him. I feel like.
Yeah.
So maybe his
He put on a lot of
started
other-
to tarnish.
maybe he's only 2 in at this point.
But he had
then,
other.
yeah, he's still
Yeah.
top dog.
He had lots of movies with wigs and
A lot of makeup, a lot of
weird
wigs.
makeups and
Yeah.
outfits and stuff. So, you know,
But,
hey,
yeah,
thing.
yeah. So I don't know. But overall, Heat is right there up at the top, and one of his greatest films for sure, and certainly one of his most epic. There is now. I own it. Probably many people listening to this own it. I have not read it yet, but Heat 2, the novel, was released, written by Michael Mann. I believe last year it came out. And it is both a sequel and a prequel to the film, in that we see, you know, some of our characters leading, you know, what their life was like prior to the story of the film, but also picking up like moments after the film concludes. So we follow Val Kilmer's character, we follow Vincent Hanna, like what happens to those characters as they go into their next chapter. So it's I just haven't had the time to read it. I'm really excited to. I am trying to keep my expectations low, but supposedly it is being developed into one of Michael Mann's next projects. So I have no idea how he's going to do that with the time gap of 30 years. So
You just recast and say this is who they were. So
I think we all learned from The Irishman we should just make everyone digitally younger.
Yeah. Or you get someone younger and digital them up, like Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
Can be aged up to look like Pacino 30 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
You'll have the energy of a Timothy Chalamet.
So let's see if that comes to fruition. But if you're a fan of the movie, I feel like you kind of have to get the book out of curiosity and see what. It's not like it's a ghost writer or someone else doing it. It's Michael Mann. So if you're curious to see more about these characters, definitely pick that up.
You read it? You didn't read it?
I did not read it yet. I own it, but I've not read it.
It's canon now.
It is true. We would see a couple of other De Niro and Pacino team ups with Righteous Kill is a movie that happened.
So what do you talk about it like it's not the greatest thing to happen since Heat?
I don't think, and I don't know how many people would argue with me that it's worthy of the caliber of those actors. You know, as those guys entered the 2000s and especially the later 2000s, it happens with a lot of very, very, A-list actors that as they get older, they start to be themselves in this situation. That it's harder to play a character, and you're Al Pacino in this situation, and you're Robert De Niro in this situation. Jack Nicholson, is another one of those guys that you stop. It's getting harder to see the characters that they're playing, and you're just seeing the actor. So, it just was not a great movie. And then we would see them again team up in The Irishman, which is, I think you see people who love The Irishman and people who had a hard time with it. I had a hard time with it. A lot of that had to do with the digitally, de-aging of them, and finding that very distracting, and took me kind of out of the movie. So, not story wise, but just visually was like really hard to get into. But really good, especially from Pacino. I felt like really good performance in that one.
Yeah, I like that one.
So we've seen at least 3 team ups. Godfather 2, obviously they're both in, but not together. And then coming back around, why we kind of came to this movie in the first place was looking back at Tom Sizemore, and rest in peace, Tom. This is his character was really another fascinating character that you really like him. As it gets into it, that last moment we brought it up earlier of picking up the little kid reminds you nope, bad dude, this is a bad guy. But great performance, really intense. I think who knows if Tom would have been able to kind of keep his life together, where he could have gone. I think he really could have had a huge career as a major leading actor, but it didn't go that way for him. And but we have this. We have a lot of other great Sizemore performances we can look back at, and separating the actor in his personal life versus the characters that they played in their performances. So that was why we came to Heat, and I loved watching it.
Glad we
time.
did, yeah.
Yeah, really glad we did it. It's a movie that was huge, and I loved for so long, and then was kind of down on it, and then coming back, it's like some of the other films we looked at, it was really good to see it again, and it's like an old friend you haven't seen in a while, but...
Yes.
Yeah, so... any other final thoughts, guys, on Heat?
Stay away from drugs, kids.
Yeah, stay in school.
Don't do drugs.
No crimes.
Yeah.
Stop committing crimes.
Just say no. And by the way, that leads me to a quick plug and thank you to some of our friends. E.K. Wimmer.
That you should say yes to. Say yes to these guys and no to drugs.
E.K. Wimmer, our buddy, who thank you for the theme song, and his podcast Laser Graves just covered. He looked back at the Just Say No campaign and the Nancy Reagan campaign. So check out his podcast, looking back at the phenomenon that was the Just Say No campaign.
Full circle. Well done, John.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you to Curtis Moore, our other buddy, for the poster of this episode. You can check us out. We're on social media at ReconCinemation Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Check out our archives at ReconCinemation.com. Drop us a 5-star rating and review. It always helps boost the show and get some more ears on it. And we're looking, we look back at Tom Sizemore. There's a couple of other Tom Sizemore movies down the road, and we've got an exciting lineup as we get into the deeper part of the spring, and the summer's heading our way. We've got some fun movies lined up, and it's going to be a good time coming up. So check us out on the next episode of ReconCinemation.
Take care.
Bye now.
Meet LA's finest.
Now blow out your socks.
He works overtime on crime, leaving room for little else.
What happens out here is my whole world.
Now he's caught between a woman who wants him
What is our life together? Pit stop.
and a man he wants to take down.
You do what you do best, try to stop guys like me.
For the first time anywhere, LA Takedown, Sunday.